So then we're ready for the first company on today's oncology seminar. And with me today, I have Magnus Corfitsen from Ascelia Pharma. And actually, as we addressed before, Ascelia Pharma is offering both treatment and a medicine. As I understand it, you both have Orviglance and Oncoral, Magnus.
Yeah.
So today's topic is, as you know, your late-stage project. So please carry on, and I will post the questions from the chat when I receive them. So welcome, Magnus.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here and present Ascelia Pharma to all of you. So I will be making certain forward-looking statements. Please pay attention to that. And what I'm really here for today is to share the story of Ascelia Pharma, what we do, and how we work on our mission to improve the life of people living with cancer by offering better treatment options. Our business model is to identify, develop, and commercialize or monetize novel drugs that address unmet medical needs within rare cancer types, where the current treatment options for patients is simply inadequate. We have 2 drugs in development. Our lead program is Orviglance, which is a diagnostic drug. It's in a global phase 3 trial, have FDA orphan drug designation. The other program is Oncoral, ready for phase 2 development in gastric cancer. The company is based in Malmö, southern part of Sweden. We have an affiliate in the US, listed on Nasdaq Stockholm since 2019, have a solid cash position leading us into the second half of next year. So we are at a very exciting period of time in our company development here. Right now, we're late in development. As we grow the company, we will be. Is there an echo?
No.
Oh, okay, good. So right now we're late stage development. Over the next few years, we will transform the company into. I see that there's a lot of echo here. I don't know exactly. Yeah. Is it better now? I don't hear the echo. Yeah, great. So coming back here. So right now we're very exciting period of time. We're late stage development. Over the next few years, we'll go into transform the company to a commercial stage company where we will generate revenue from the launch of Orviglance. And in 2025, we expect Orviglance to be the market leader. Oncoral in phase 3. And what we will then have acquired and licensed 1 or 2 more programs that address unmet medical needs in rare cancer disease settings. So tremendous growth opportunity, lots of patients that need our need, and we can help serve them in a better way. So now we're moving into talking about the programs. So the lead program, Orviglance, it's a diagnostic drug for liver MRI procedures. And sort of the clinical setting, the problem we're solving is really looking for cancer in the liver. That is a major problem for cancer patients. A lot of different cancer types like colorectal, breast, lung cancer metastasize or spreads to the liver. So the big question is, which patient will have cancer spreading to the liver, which will have liver metastasis? And how is the liver metastasis responding to therapy? Is it possible to do surgery on them? So this is millions of patients around the world every year. So when there's a suspicion of cancer in the liver, they need to have medical imaging. MRI is the most sensitive imaging technology for doing that. To get the optimal image quality, you need to inject intravenously today a gadolinium-based contrast agent or imaging drug. So gadolinium is a toxic heavy metal. It's chelated, bound in a chemical structure to minimize toxicity, but that's what is being used today. The problem is that has risk of potentially fatal side effects in patients with impaired kidney function. And therefore, the clinical practice is that the radiologist, before they inject gadolinium in a patient, make a risk assessment of the kidney function, how well is the kidney functioning, to allow the patient to quickly get rid of the gadolinium. And that is an issue for the patients with severe renal impairment, because they can get nephrogenic systemic fibrosis, which can kill them. So all gadolinium products have black box warning. Orviglance is based on manganese, not gadolinium, so this risk is non-existent with Orviglance, and that's our target population, the patient at risk of potentially fatal side effects from the products currently out there. So this is an example from one of our patients in a phase 2. So this is an actual T1 weighted image. So the patient is lying on the back with the feet towards you. What you can see on the left-hand side of the image is the liver. So it's a large organ in sort of in the bowel area. You can see some black structures. Those are bile ducts and blood vessels. So radiologists will have a lot of slices here and will do sort of a 3D modeling of the structure and can fairly easily assess blood vessels and bile ducts. The left-hand side is the unenhanced. This is really what patients most frequently are getting today in our target population. So this is the best they can do. This patient got Orviglance, and what you can see to the right is a very clear enhancement of all the healthy liver cells. That's because the manganese in Orviglance goes intracellular. It goes inside the healthy liver cells. You can see a black structure marked with an orange ring. That is a metastasis. And because this metastasis is originally colon cells that turn to cancer cells and move to the liver, that it's unable to take up the manganese and it will stay black on the scan. So this is obviously one example, but we've done 6 clinical studies to date with consistent positive effect on efficacy and safety. We also done a re-evaluation of all the images from all the studies that we really pulled together and had Professor Rendell Nielsen from Duke University score and evaluate all the images. And that came out very positively, 33% more lesions. And on the important parameters of lesion visualization, so the delineation, the border sharpness, how you could say how well defined the difference between black and bright is, and conspicuity, the brightness of the liver compared to the black spots, we had very highly significant p-values. That's very important because that endpoint is exactly what we have as the phase 3 endpoint in the currently ongoing trial. So we are studying 200 patients with known or suspected focal liver lesions, which is in many cases is cancer, and severe renal impairment. So the target population that is poorly served by what is out there today. The comparator will be the same as I showed you on the image a few minutes ago. The left-hand side, the unenhanced, will be compared with the combined information from the left and the right-hand side. So really, are we adding any value by doing the Orviglance enhanced scan? Based on the data we have from all the clinical studies we've done, we believe that there's a good likelihood that we will be successful in this study. So we're working with 50 sites in US, Europe, and Latin America. We've been, like many others, been impacted by COVID, and we're working hard to complete the study. We expect to complete the patient enrollment this year. So this is really, big, significant unmet medical need. We have a phase 3 program in place. We have an FDA orphan drug designation, and we have discussed extensively with FDA and also with EMA. So if the study is successful, we believe the product will be approved. But we remain obviously to see the data. The next question is obviously what happens when the product is on the market? What's the commercial outlook? And just very briefly here, Orviglance is targeting a $500 to $600 million addressable market on an annual basis, US, Europe, and Japan. As with other pharmaceuticals, the US is by far the largest individual market. And our strategy is to go alone, build our own commercial team of around 40 people in the US that will successfully commercialize the product there. The rest of the world, we will find partners. We don't have at present the scale to do a global launch. So we will find partners who we can work with and who can bring Orviglance to patients in those geographies. We've done extensive market research. We have a chief commercial officer who is leading a commercial team on the pre-launch activities, working with stakeholders, radiologists, payers, other experts and stakeholders that are important for us in order to get you could say the market access and the reimbursement in the relevant markets at you could say at a price point that is providing a lot of value to the healthcare system and to Ascelia Pharma. So on top of that, there's a growing market because medical imaging is growing. Also, countries such as China has tremendous opportunities for us, which is not included in this forecast. So this really, in the interest of time, rounds off on the Orviglance opportunity. The other program we have in our pipeline is Oncoral, and Oncoral is based on a very widely used molecule called irinotecan, which is a chemotherapeutic agent, been on the market for a number of years as an intravenous dosing. So it has been shown to be effective in treatment of colorectal cancer and pancreatic cancer when given as an infusion every third week. We think, and that's what we have patented, that's the data we have to date, support that instead of doing a large dose every third week, we can actually do, improve the utility of the molecule irinotecan by giving it on a daily basis. So smaller daily doses, ensuring that there will be drug in the patient's body to attack the tumor cells more consistently throughout the various cell cycles. And I think that's extremely exciting. So what we have...
Magnus, if I may,
yeah.
There's a couple of questions for Orviglance. So if we could address that before we move into Oncoral, is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Good. Because there's a question about partnership, and I know that's a part of your strategy. I think you touched very briefly upon it, but could you address it again? Are you in discussions with partners outside US because you want to commercialize the product or the diagnostic yourself? But what are you going to do in Europe and Asia?
Yeah. So as you rightly allude to, that's part of our strategy. So we want partners outside the US, and that is what we have communicated. And I'm not in a position to sort of comment on any discussions as part of our policy. So that's consistent with how we've done it, throughout. So at some point when we have a partner, we will announce it. But otherwise, we will not comment on whether discussions are taking place or where we are on that matter. Unfortunately, I understand the interest, but that's how I can share information.
Of course, I understand. And then there's also a question about gadolinium. Well, you're already in phase 3, so of course you made some comparison. But could you elaborate a little more on the comparison you did?
Yeah. So the patients we're targeting is they have poor kidney function. So that's also why when we discussed with the regulators and the radiologists that it would be we considered unethical to do a trial where we inject gadolinium into these patients. So that's why we compare with the unenhanced. That's what we need to be to demonstrate in the phase 3. We did a study. One of the phase 2 studies was done in patients with normal kidney function, and there we did a head-to-head comparison in 20 patients with a liver-specific gadolinium agent. In that setting, you could say we could have we could compare directly, and we took that data and those images and had 3 independent radiologists to review that. So really sort of the same rigorousness as we do in the phase 3 trial, we applied to this data. And the outcome was that all 3 saw more lesions for Orviglance than the liver-specific gadolinium. All 3 saw smaller lesions, which is important because you want to see the tumor when it's as small as possible, because then it's easier to treat. And 2 out of the 3 readers had higher scores on the delineation and conspicuity, the co-primary endpoint in the phase 3 trial. So this is not unenhanced. This is a gadolinium agent. So 20 patients is not a lot. So we don't say we are better. We're referring to these data, and we say we are probably at least as good as the gadolinium. So there's no compromise on these parameters of using Orviglance versus the gadolinium agents. So I think that brings a lot of comfort. And actually, this week there is a European Society for Gastrointestinal Radiology taking place in Lisbon, tomorrow we will have a presentation where we will shed more light on some of this data. So it's super exciting. So I think we're comfortable in the comparison. So there's no compromise on these parameters.
Thanks a lot, Magnus. Please carry on with Oncoral. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So really, sort of recapping here. So taking the very potent molecule with good efficacy, but a very challenging safety profile, by giving it on a daily basis instead of a huge dose every third week, lower daily doses, we think we can improve the efficacy safety profile. And what we saw in the phase 1 trial, we've done 2 phase 1 trials. What we saw there was that we could get a good exposure. We could reduce the variability, which is important when you have a tablet therapy compared to an intravenous dosing. But we also saw an important difference in the safety profile. We didn't see any new safety issues, new types, which is good. But one of the major problems with irinotecan doses is neutropenia. So lowering the level of white blood cells. As you know, white blood cells are important for the immune system. Low level of white blood cells makes the patient a lot more at risk for infections and other problems. So that's something that is of significant concern. Typically, you would see a number of grade 3 or 4, sort of severe or life-threatening neutropenias in these patients when you do the intravenous dosing. In our patient population, they were very sick patients who had gone through a number of different treatment options. We only saw grade 1 or 2 on neutropenia. So there's a significant differentiation here. And what we also saw some signs of efficacy in patients who had previously been treated on intravenous irinotecan. So they had been on therapy every third week. The tumor continued to grow. They changed to a new treatment option. When those patients, some of them, when they came on into this trial and they got daily dosing, they actually saw stable disease. It's not a huge proof of efficacy in any way, but it's a sign of efficacy that I think is extremely encouraging in a very, very sick patient population. So once again, our phase 3 program showed that the drug is absorbed. We have good variability, acceptable variability in terms of how you can do an oral drug. And we saw signs of efficacy and better safety on neutropenia. So very encouraging phase 1 program. When we look for the signs of efficacy, obviously that's what you show in phase 2 and 3. This is from the literature where the intravenous version has been tested every third week, which is the standard, or every week. So obviously it's more challenging to give a dosing every week, but this was done in this study. So after a year and a half, the overall survival was 20% in the every third week dosing and 32% in the other arm with weekly dosing. So again, supporting, and there's other data supporting this, the more frequent dosing gives a better potential for better efficacy. And that's what we need to prove in our phase 2 trial. And as you can see to the right here, we're testing it with Lonsurf, which is another tablet-based therapy. The combination of Lonsurf and IV irinotecan almost completely inhibits tumor growth in this very aggressive animal model, much better than IV irinotecan or Lonsurf alone. Lonsurf is approved for treatment of gastric cancer and colorectal cancer today. So this study is going to be 100 patients in metastatic gastric cancer patients. We will compare Lonsurf versus the combined regimen of Oncoral and Lonsurf, measured on progression-free survival. So a solid phase 2 oncology trial. We have a clinical collaboration with Taiho Oncology, part of Otsuka Pharmaceuticals. They are, they are the owners of Lonsurf, and they are providing the drug free of charge for the study, and they're providing drug free of charge, and then they are also providing a lot of advice that is extremely helpful because they have been doing trials in gastric cancer with Lonsurf, and we're using some of the same investigators, some of the same sites that have been effective in that treatment. So that is where we go. You could say when we look at the, maybe I just allude to, so what we've said is we've been delayed, as mentioned previously, with the Orviglance phase 3 study. We are pushing to complete that study as soon as possible. And therefore, we have decided not to start the patient enrollment of the phase 2 trial here in Oncology until we have completed the study. That's kind of the plan. We don't want to take people and staff from the phase 3 study and use them in initiating the phase 2 study, because we risk adding another delay. So on Oncology, which we, on Orviglance, which we don't want. So we are in a solid financial position. We ended the first quarter with 233 million Swedish in cash. We've been burning 35 million a quarter last year, so providing us a healthy cash balance into the second half of 2023. So right now, as mentioned, the key priority for us is completing the phase 3 patient enrollment, and continuing and ramping up the Orviglance launch preparations, pre-launch activities, working with all stakeholders, and making the entire medical community aware that here is coming a highly differentiated product out there that can help a number of patients. So with that, I would like to sort of open up for more questions.
Thanks a lot, Magnus. Really good presentation. And when we talk about funding, so with your current cash position, are you able to launch the product, or do you have to get more funds if the product is, of course, approved?
Yeah, so we have funding to complete the phase 3 development, which we expect to be this year. Oh, I think we have an echo again. Yeah. So we have funding to complete the phase 3 development, which will be this year. We have funding to the second half next year, so a very healthy buffer, I'd say. What we don't have is funding to build an entire US launch organization, do all the pre-launch and launch the product. That is something I think we need to deal with. So that's financing could come in either raising a capital in the equity market, could potentially be through partnerships for outside US geographies that will help fund that. So I mean, I think we're looking in numerous different scenarios as I think is prudent to do as a biotech company. So you could say the short term is we don't need to raise any money right now, but to launch the product we need more money at some point.
But of course you also have a very strong card. With that said, I would like to ask a little more about Orviglance. So as you mentioned, in a population of 20 patients, you showed better results from the MR imaging. With this knowledge, are you able to bring Orviglance into other areas of cancer? So if you understand my question right, do you have some platform that you could elaborate on and use for different kinds? Because it's the diagnostic technology, so it's very interesting if you're able to make better imaging for the radiologist.
Yeah, no. So the one of the attractions of Orviglance is that it's oral. So basically, patients will be taking sort of a glass of water, 200 milliliters. They will mix Orviglance, which is a powder, today, and will drink it. And then it goes into the stomach, it goes into the small intestine, and goes directly there from the blood supply through the vena porta to the liver, and enters the healthy liver cells, and we see the beautiful images I showed you earlier. What is also important to note is that the liver has many functions in the body, and one of them is to sort of protect the blood circulation in the entire body from toxins. And we all need manganese. It's a natural trace element. We all have it. It's required for certain enzymatic processes, but too much is never a good thing. So the liver has this first pass effect, which really, when the manganese goes to the liver, it goes through the bile duct back into the gastric system. So when we measure blood levels of manganese in the patients, as we've done in all our trials, what we see is that almost all values are within the normal range of manganese blood levels. So it's pretty close to the background level of manganese. That gives us a very, very unique safety profile. It also means that it's only Orviglance is only useful for the liver. So we really have a targeted approach just to the liver, not for other organs, and that gives us a completely different safety profile. Because if you had a lot of free manganese in the blood, you might be concerned that manganese as an ion would compete with calcium ions, and that can have effects on cardiac tissue, brain, all other organs. But that is not something we see. And we've also seen in animal data no exposure to heart or kidneys or anything else that could potentially be a concern. So we're very targeted, gives a very, very unique safety profile and differentiation, but it means that we're only targeting the liver.
Thanks a lot, Magnus. And then,
but you just one addition. So what we're also working on, and as we have announced, is that we're working on a second generation agent that instead of a powder is an effervescent tablet, sort of in Danish a brusetablet, that will be more will have some advantages compared to the powder version. So we're working in various ways, and then potentially we could expand into other liver imaging procedures than just you could say diagnosis and treatment follow-up and surgical planning.
Thanks a lot, Magnus. And then just one final question here before the time is running out. There's a question about Oncology and the comparison studies you're doing with irinotecan. Sorry, could you elaborate a little on that? How are you comparing the two products?
Yeah, so I think what we're doing is we're going into gastric cancer, and we do that because there's a tremendous unmet medical need in gastric cancer, and we can help patients there. What we can do together with Lonsurf is we can have an all-tablet therapy. So all tablet combination therapy for these patients would be, tremendous. I think you could say the intravenous irinotecan, and there are two forms. One is the sort of the usual, the original one that is given every third week, and you have a high spike. There's also a depot version that stays active for a longer period, but it also flattens out quite quickly. So I think we have a very different safety profile. We also go into a different indication because none of them are approved in gastric cancer. Except that the old one, the every third week is approved for gastric cancer in Japan, based on very old data, but not in US and Europe. So it gives us a good comfort that irinotecan is also effective in treating gastric cancer, as is also reported in the literature. So I think the key differentiation is that when you have lower plasma levels, lower amount of irinotecan and there its metabolites in the blood, you will have a better safety profile and potentially also a better efficacy profile. That's how we really differentiate. And with a tablet dosing, we can give it every day. You cannot do that with an infusion.
Thanks a lot, Magnus. Great presentation. And with that said, we stop the first presentation with Ascelia Pharma. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
A great pleasure to be here.